Hi everyone, I am Anand Chawla and I'll be your MC for the event today. Let me begin by introducing myself. I'm a lawyer, I practice at the Delhi High Court, and I also write a lifestyle blog on my website nooranandchawla.com. Earlier this year I published my first ebook, which is called Tales from My Travel Treasury. I've been associated with the 1947 Partition Archive for a long time now, as a citizen historian and with other aspects as well. The 1947 Partition Archive documents the nearly lost history of partition. Our flagship oral history project, which is what you saw in the video, is the largest of its kind in South Asia, and so far we have documented more than 8,000 families' stories. You can learn more about our work by visiting our website or speaking to our team members. Please raise your hands, team members, if you're in the room. And there are 2 more outside. So, as a citizen historian volunteer, I've contributed by interviewing my own grandfather, Daljit Singh. He was a 16-year-old living in Delhi in 1947. He saw an influx of his family members arrive in his city, in his home, and it really unsettled him. It had a very profound effect on him. He also volunteered with the NCC, or National Cadet Corps, where they were assigned the duty of removing bodies from riot-affected areas. I can never forget how emotional he would get every time he narrated the incidents from that turbulent phase. Today, it is my honor to facilitate this first event in a quarterly series that we have partnered with India Habitat Center to bring to you, called Voices of Partition. The theme for this first panel is Shaping of Indian Identity. As you know, our country in its current form was born in 1947 and through an intriguing set of events. First, there were more than 563 kingdoms with varying degrees of reliance and subjugation to the British Crown. Most of these were merged together, and 2 new countries were formed, India and Pakistan. And with the formation of these 2 new countries came the formation of 2 new identities, Indian and Pakistani. Of course, today we will focus on the former, the Indian identity. More than 1 billion of us have come to accept the Indian identity, and today we will explore this transformation over the last 72 years.
In 1947, of course, like anybody else, we had to go through the problem. I think the 2 books written by Khushwant Singh, Chained to Pakistan and Nightingale Would Never Sing Again, are the 2 classics. But more than that, what I like is Sadat Hasan Manto. I have read his several books, the short stories, but the worst one is something which you may not have read. He writes a story of about 4 lines. उसने उसको छुरा मार के मार दिया, वो मर गया बच्चा, और बाद में उसने पजामा खोल के देखा, ओ ये तो मिस्टेक हो गई. He had killed a child of his own tribe, of his own religion. That shows how depraved we were at that point of time. Have we changed for the better since then? I think not. Look at 1984. What happened in just 24, 36 hours? 4,000 to 8,000 people were killed almost in no time. There are many more such things which are still going on. We are still divided. So we need to change. How do we change? Is for us to make stories.
Good evening. I am Indra Trehan, wife of Air Commodore Emil Trehan, VRC, born on 15th of July 1932. District Ladkana, and the village's name is Tab. Now, when I was 21 days old there in Tab, my grandfather, who was a doctor, he was very serious. And he had got the, I'm forgetting the name, typhoid fever. Those days, typhoid fever was very risky. So my mother, Tara, took me there to meet my grandfather. As soon as I reached the veranda of the house, the doctor fever broke. Then he said, "This girl is very lucky for me. I will take her and I'll not give it back to Tara." That was his daughter. तो मुझे फिर grandfather ने adopt कर दिया when I was 21 days old. बस फिर उसके बाद जहाँ जहाँ डॉक्टर की मेडिकल ऑफिसर की ट्रांसफ़र होती थी मैं वहाँ वहाँ पढ़ती थी. फिर जब भी मैं 10 साल की हो गई, now doctor was very fond of education. He said my children must have a proper education. He had 2 sons and 2 daughters, and one third one was my mother Tara. So they were studying in Karachi, so they sent me to Karachi, and I also joined the school in Karachi.
I'm going to talk a little bit about my understanding of identity through learnings from oral history. So for me, the identity issue in India became apparent when I started documenting oral histories back in 2009 for the 1947 Partition Archive. Now, the archive was not born yet in 2009, and the oral history documentation work was more of just a personal project at that time. The archive was born in 2011. So I've personally interviewed about 100 individuals of the 8,000 that we have in the archive right now. I've interviewed individuals from India, from Pakistan, from Bangladesh. And from these interviews, I started to get a very nuanced version of Indian history that you can't find in any textbook. And one of the few things that really stood out to me was the transformation of identity that people went through at the time of partition. People, especially those people who were from rural areas, and those people who were from these 563 kingdoms that I had not heard of growing up, their identities went through the greatest transformation, and it was very fascinating for me to hear about this. Within the big cities that fell in the British Indian territories, people mostly seemed to refer to themselves as Indian, so there was not as much of a transformation there. So many of the people that I interviewed in both India and Pakistan would say to me, I hadn't even heard of India or Pakistan until after 1947, when I ended up in one or the other country. And quite often, a lot of these people, they seem to think of themselves as being from their village or their home district or from their home region, like they were Punjabis or they were Dogras, and so on. They often refer to their ethno-linguistic regions or their kingdoms, like they were Patialvis from Patiala. So this prompted me to dig a bit deeper, and what I found was quite intriguing. So I had heard growing up, I had learned that India was a very, very ancient country. It had been around for a very long time, for thousands of years. But this clashed with what I was learning from oral history. In fact, the actuality is that yes, in a sense, India has been around for thousands of years, but not in the form of India. The cultures, the indigenous cultures here have been around for thousands of years. I think 60,000 is what we heard earlier.